And we are live. All right, good evening, everybody. Season's winding down. Team sectionals were completed on Tuesday, and then, of course, on Saturday, we will have dual team state. So, Rob, we'll go ahead and start with Class 1A.
Went pretty much according to the script. We've got almost a complete Central Illinois top half of the bracket on Saturday with Prairie Central against Hayworth. That will be a rematch of an Ames Rumble duel. The second one in that bracket will also be a rematch of an Ames Rumble duel. It'll be Tremont against Lena Winslow Stockton, and Tremont. So in that upper bracket, we got a couple of schools making their first appearance in the Elite Eight. Hayworth, which hosted a sectional for the first time, wound up winning that match, and they're in against Prairie Central, which beat them for ninth place in the Rumble. And Tremont, Lena Winslow Stockton, the other half of that top bracket. In the bottom bracket, we have Aurora Christian going against unranked Peatone in a quarterfinal. Peatone making its first appearance in the Elite Eight.
Tough first round draw to catch your first time down there.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
And Vandalia going against Monticello in the other quarterfinal down below. Both those schools were in the Rumble, but they did not meet. So this will be their first meeting of the year. Usually they do meet during the season. Didn't happen this year because of the weather, partly, and just because they happen to be on opposite sides at the Rumble. So actually, 3 of the top 4 teams did make it to the Elite Eight in 1A and got pretty well separated with Aurora Christian. They'll be going against Vandalia in a semifinal. Those 2 teams met for the title last year.
Right.
And Lena Winslow Stockton on the other side with the 3 Central Illinois teams.
Good. Yeah, and Lena Winslow Stockton, obviously one of the better 1A teams, as we talk about it. And I think just over what you mentioned, I kind of like the fact, we go back about the dual team formats and Abe's Rumble, where all these 1A teams get a lot of good experience participating in that tournament and actually get a look at maybe teams they're going to face down the road.
Sure. And they get some ideas as to what they might be able to do to try to get some matchups going their way through that experience. Lena Winslow Stockton and Tremont met in the semifinals of the Rumble, and Lena Winslow Stockton won 56-8. So Tremont really has an uphill battle trying to figure out what matchups they might be able to exploit there. Prairie Central against Hayworth is probably going to be a very high-scoring match because of Hayworth's strength in the lower weights and Prairie Central's strength in the upper weights. There's going to be a lot of pins in that match, I think.
So any intriguing matchups, maybe we look at first-round matchups, semifinal matchups in the 1A state brackets?
Well, Lena Winslow Stockton proved at the Rumble that they are that they're still kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. At least on their side of the bracket. I think it's going to be interesting to see whether they are balanced enough to go with Aurora Christian. They're very young. I mean, they only have 2 seniors and 2 juniors, if you can
Huh.
believe that in this
Wow.
lineup.
Wow.
And and they're still dominating. So boy,
Yeah.
that feeder program they've got is really supplying
Good.
them with some talent right now.
Good.
Obviously, the match between Hayworth and Prairie Central has a chance to be very close. It's number
Mhm.
12 against number 13. Um, but
Yeah.
this is going to be pretty cut and dried. It's going to be probably Prairie Central against Lena Winslow Stockton
Right.
in one semi, Aurora Christian against Vandalia in the other semi, and I do think the semis could be pretty decent.
Okay. So, do you think finals we're going to see Aurora Christian and
Yeah,
Lena Winslow?
I think we'll see. I think we'll see a number one against number two, and it was a 37-24 match in the sectional last year, and I think it's going to be pretty close again.
Good. Good.
Again, it's I think Lena Winslow probably has. It's going to be a question of whether they have enough in the upper weights to make Aurora Christian sweat a little bit, because that's
Mhm.
they're okay up there, but they're not great.
Right. No, their strength
So,
is lower and in the middle. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's and they'll need to they'll need to steal some points in the middle as well.
Okay. So, moving on to 2A.
Well, we have another first timer at the bottom of the bracket, and we'll get there in a minute. Chatham
Mhm.
Glenwood came out of the ranks of the honorable mentions to beat Oldie Richland County on Tuesday, and they get to take on one of the 2 undefeated teams that are still left, Marion Central,
Mhm.
who, amazingly, they're still looking for their first state trophy. They ran into Washington
Yeah.
last year in the quarters.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's in the first slot, and Coal City will be going against Niles Notre Dame,
Mhm.
also in the top half of the bracket. So we're
Coal
looking
Cities.
probably at a semi with number 2 against number 3.
Mhm.
So which is certainly the best you can hope for.
Well, Coal City's looking tough. I mean, if I remember correctly, they won Abe's Rumble.
Yes, they did,
Yeah.
and they had and they had things pretty much their way
Mhm.
in the match Tuesday against Dixon. Um, they they had 6 pins in that match, and so that you can obviously, when you get 6 falls, that makes a difference. I think that's a match where schedule kind of won it for them. So 46-21 was the final.
Mhm.
But and then in the bottom bracket, the match we kind of looked forward to was it'll be Washington going against Lamont.
Mhm.
Washington going for its 4th in a row, which
Right.
had getting past 3 in a row has never been done, and has only been done in 2A by Montini,
Montini, of course. Yeah.
and only been done period by 4 other teams in state history. So
Mhm.
Washington kind of chasing history if they
Mhm.
could get past Lamont, past Triad in the semifinals, and past either Coal City or Marion Central in the final.
Well, I find that.
Lamont, you know, was able to get past Oak Forest for a
Right.
second time this year
Yep.
in the sectional, despite Oak Forest having 10 state qualifiers. So
Well, I find kind of the matchup between Marion Central and Coal City interesting because you're looking at like, where one team is really tough at certain weights, but Coal City just has such good depth.
They've got great balance. They're both very strong down low, and it's going to be interesting to see probably through really through 160. I think which of those teams could get the get 5 matches out of that area, and it's because neither of these teams has a real weak spot. Marion Central's upper weights are not great, but they're good enough. Coal City's weaknesses, if they have them, are at 220 and heavy, but they're good enough.
Right.
So we're just going to have to see what happens there. That's going to be a low scoring match, I think.
That should be a good one. And I think just my gut feeling, if Coal City gets past them, I'm kind of curious how Coal City would match up against Washington, because Washington this year is not Washington of old.
No, they're not. They did wrestle the week before the regional, and Washington won. But that's obviously a match that could be turned around with a 34-24 was the final the first time, and that's close enough where one or two changes, turnarounds in a match could make a difference. But of course, we would not see that match until the finals if it happened. Right.
Which is good, though, in a way. I mean, I'm glad they're on opposite sides of the bracket.
The Washington Lamont winner will take on the winner of Triad, which turned around a regular season loss to beat Muhammad Seymour on Tuesday against the one first-time entry in this classification, Noble Gary Comer from the city. They beat Evergreen Park on Tuesday, and Noble Comer did not qualify a wrestler for the individual state, but they're a pretty nice balanced lineup, and they had more than enough to get past Evergreen Park on Tuesday at Oak Forest.
Okay.
So, and then in 3A, of course, the quarterfinal at the top that probably all of us figured was going to happen. Marmion going against Prospect. It's amazing. Mount Carmel beat Marmion by
a ton. They killed them.
Almost 40 earlier in the season.
Yeah.
But when you look at the rematch here, obviously the loss of Blue made a difference.
Yeah. Well, the lineups were different.
Sotelo certainly would have won.
Yeah.
But Sotelo got 6 points over the over the backup, and maybe it's not 6 points. If Blue's in the picture here.
Right. Well, an interesting thing too is I could imagine, in Marmion Academy too, with a healthy Ferraro in that lineup.
Sure, but Ferraro really wouldn't have been a factor because they shut down Ferraro in January.
Right.
And,
I know.
We wouldn't have been able to even think about whether he would have been in the lineup or not. But obviously we could have thought about Blue since he wrestled last weekend, and that his loss was definitely something that hurt Mount Carmel greatly.
And that was a tight duel. There was 27-26 was the final, and that was it was 28-26, and they lost a team point. But
I'm assuming
Yeah,
that was probably a celebration penalty.
probably.
But Jaffe beating Uribe 9-5 at
Right, right.
120 was a key match for Marmion.
Yes.
Callaway beating Gator at 138, 4 to
Yep.
nothing. That another key match.
Yep.
In fact, they bumped Callaway, Fleck, and Chumbley
Right. All
all up a
three.
weight class and Lelazis was only able to get a decision over Walter Green, and Callaway, Fleck, and Chumbley all got wins for Marmion, with Chumbley getting a major at
Right.
152 over Muley. And
Yep.
then Gross winning at 160 over Breen. Dahm winning at 70 over Terrell. That's 5 straight wins for
Mhm.
Marmion from 138 through 170. And of course, that made a huge difference
Yeah.
in that match. Plus, the other huge win was the overtime win at 220 for Bazookas over Michigan.
Bazookas. Right.
So so 220 plus that stretch from 138 to 170 was what turned the tide for Marmion.
Sure. And in 3A overall, I mean, we had obviously the lopsided wins, but we had that wasn't the only nail biter. I mean, I go to it, Prospect, and I mean, I guess you could say it's an upset, but against Huntley, that was a nail
Certainly a
biter.
little.
That came down to the wire.
Yeah, it's certainly a little bit. And you have I'm thinking that this I'm looking at this. It was a 7-7 match split,
Yep.
and and Prospect bumped a couple of guys here. Bumped Vilches up to 138, who he lost to Jakowicz, but Basinger at 145 beat Miranda, which was a big win for
Yep.
them. And they also brought Carangella down to 160. He was a state qualifier at 170, obviously to get him away from
Ferrante.
Ferrante, and Carangella
Yeah.
got a fall, which was a huge win
Yep.
for them.
Yep.
And then getting the fall from Ramos at heavyweight over Burba was big too.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't go terribly, unlike what you might expect, but bumping those guys in the two guys in the middle uh, made a difference for Prospect.
Yeah, and just to make a point here too. Now, last year Huntley made their first trip to the Elite Eight. They finished fourth, but to be fair, Prospect has made several trips to the Elite Eight in the past few years.
Right. And Huntley was also without Lira at 132, and that might have made a difference. They forfeited to Prospect there, but you go with what you have, and you hope it's good enough.
Yeah, and speaking of the going with what you have and hope it's good enough, and I want to go to another nail biter with Oak Park River Forest and Glenbard North, and Glenbard North. The way they were wrestling maybe earlier December when Sandberg beat the snot out of them versus the Glenbard North I saw compete at the Clash. And since then was a team that's been wrestling a whole hell of a lot better. And quite frankly, and I harped on this, way back in that first round match they had it not been for a horrible call by a referee, I honestly think Glenbard North would have been in maybe the third or fourth bracket on the second day. So Oak Park River Forest shows up and forfeits 160. So no Cagnina, no Rundle, 4 backups in the lineup. And it literally came down to the final match with Oak Park Heavyweight needing to win by bonus points, had a major decision, but ended up getting the fall. And so they advanced with a very close 35-33 margin. And
yeah,
if they don't have Cagnina and
at,
Rundle back in the lineup, they're going to have a hard time against Lockport, and there's no way they're going to beat Marmion Academy.
Is there now? Are they? Is Rundell still out?
Well, I don't know the whole story yet. I heard that he and Cagnina may be back Saturday.
Because I'm looking at this box score, and boy, oh boy, is Connor Nagila ever a hero for Oak Park River Forest? Getting the win at 113.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And they jacked that whole lineup up.
Yeah, but getting bumped up for 106 to win that match over Curran. What a huge win for Oak Park River Forest that was.
Yeah, and a lot. Some of the backups did okay, and the other one you have to look at the overtime win by Zeke at 195. Huge,
right? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, see, they bumped Eddie Bolivar and they bumped up early. So and those guys got a tech and a decision. So some bonus points there that made a difference as well.
So going, a lot of the team sectionals kind of went the way you kind of figured. I know, DeKalb went easy, Monty went easy.
I did just cut in here for a second. Sure, I did find out about Odom.
Yeah,
he had a concussion in that match with Bolen.
Yeah,
and he may or may not wrestle Saturday because he's in concussion protocol.
Right, the protocol, which usually runs around 2 weeks or so, and a lot of teams have had to deal with that. Nolan, of course, was wrestling on a torn MCL. I actually saw him post tournament over at Houlihan's afterwards, and was chatting with him, and his knee looked horrible. I got to tell you, I don't know how that kid was even walking, let alone wrestling on that thing.
Yeah, because apparently Odom apparently could have wrestled if they needed him on Tuesday, but they held him out.
Sure, but a nice win for Edwardsville. They're still going to state.
They'll certainly, they would certainly. Well, I guess we'll see if they need him against DeKalb or not. My guess is they will, but that's one of the duels I still don't have a box score for because Taylorville apparently can't figure out how to run track wrestling. But the big match there came at 138 where Zupancy held on for a win over Garrett Geigner. And Lincoln Way West had a big lead early, and Edwardsville came back to win it with wins in the upper weights heading through to the lower weights.
And so, I would say, Edwardsville having a really good season. It's really unfortunate about Luke Odom because obviously he's not only just one of the best 138-pounders in the state, he's a nationally ranked wrestler.
Yes, he's a national caliber wrestler. He proved that this year.
And but overall, Edwardsville still beating a very and make no mistake, folks, Lincoln Way West is a good team.
Right. No, and
that was a competitive dual meet.
This was a situation where the two teams were strong and weak in different places. Edwardsville is strong in the upper weights and strong in the lower weights, and a little bit vulnerable in the middle.
Sure.
And Lincoln Way West is very strong in the middle, and so. Edwardsville, got their Lincoln Way West looks like they had a lead of about 19 to they were down. Lincoln Way West was up 19-0 after
Right.
4 matches.
Yeah, no, a huge comeback
They
there by
they
Edwardsville.
got their run started at
Yeah.
195 and continued it through uh, through
Yeah,
Noah Certain, who gave him the
obviously.
lead for the first
Yeah.
time.
Well, and I want to
So
say on a side note, I kind of, because we obviously we talk heavily about the Chicago area wrestling programs for a reason, but I like, the fact that Edwardsville head coach gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, the IWOCA Hall of Fame, and then they get a nice win over Lincoln Way West. They go to the state tournament. I mean, it's kind of a good story.
oh yeah, no, this is as good an Edwardsville lineup as I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they're wrestling a DeKalb team with as good a DeKalb lineup as
Whoa,
I've
whoa, well,
seen. So
DeKalb, yeah, the
this is
Barbs,
don't
yeah,
necessarily look for a lot of bonus points in this
no,
match.
no, and the
You could have probably 10, 11 matches in that duel going 6 minutes, maybe longer.
sure, and I'll mention this too. DeKalb earlier in the season, particularly when I was at the Rex Whitlatch tournament, their team looked like a mash unit. I mean, they were taking hits left and right, losing guys. Fabian Lopez to concussion protocol. I don't remember who the other. Maybe it was one of the Curans, but I mean they were really beat up. But now they're at full strength and they've got a pretty good lineup. I mean, they're solid. They do have some weak spots, but where they're good, they're very good.
Yeah, it's that you're gonna get a little nicked up when you wrestle the kind of schedule that they
Sure.
wrestle, and so they've obviously decided they have a group of kids that is ready for that challenge and wants it.
Very true. It'd be interesting to see, like the lower bracket, just kind of looking ahead. I'm kind of thinking it'll probably be a DeKalb Montini matchup.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, upper bracket is I expect Marmion Academy to win. And again, it depends on what lineup Oak Park River Forest shows up with. If they have a full team, if they have Rundle and Cagnina back in the lineup, I definitely expect them to beat Lockport and then probably a really good duel versus Marmion Academy.
Right. And but Marmion showed, of course, that they have, they have some moves they can make.
Yes, they can.
But they're they're not without their
sure
weak spots against Oak Park River Forest either. I mean, obviously,
obviously,
220 is a little bit of a toss up. Oak Park certainly has an advantage at heavyweight.
Yep.
And then it's a question of whether Marmion tries to bump people up high. You've got you've got Zick that could score that could score points. They've really just got Bazookas. That's a sure winner above 170 unless they do some creative things with their lineup.
Yeah, and Oak Park will be solid with Middlebrooks at 182, Zeke at 195. Obviously, Hollis, third place finisher in state at 285. Sotelo, obviously, probably bonus points at 106. But again, I say, now if Oak Park River Forest has Rundle in the lineup, and you've still got Nico Bolivar, you've got Okansanya, you've got Eddie Bolivar, Tori Early. 145 has been their biggest hole this year. Chapman at 152, and if Cagnina's back in the lineup at 160, they'll have the firepower. But if they're missing Cagnina and Rundle still come Saturday, they're going to have a tough. They're going to have
very tough.
Very tough.
I think their their best shot is probably to wrestle it straight. You don't have a 45
sure.
pounder anyway. Give Chumbley 45 and then take your
absolutely.
chances with the weights below and weights above.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting seeing. Like I said, it depends on, if they get those two guys back in the lineup, absolutely they're going to be tough. If not, then they're going to have a hard time.
Right. Now,
so
I'm still
I'm
still a little bit intrigued by the Lamont's win over Oak Forest. I mean, you think about the fact that that Lamont, the obviously this is a flaw in our system,
right?
The Nazareth Academy came within 5 points of bumping Lamont out completely.
Right.
But
in the regional,
Lamont again with those. With that murderer's row in the middle, was able to was able to get 3 pins, a tech, and a decision from 32 through 60. I mean, Oak Forest did bump Anthony Schickel, the state runner-up at 120, up to 126, and he wrestled 132 and went against Drew Nash, and that didn't work out for them. With that Nash won 8-5, good match, but Lamont still got the points.
Right.
And then Kyle Schickel, the Duke, they put they got a fall at 152, bumped Zader up to 60, and he got a fall over Ritter. So looking at this with Lamont getting 6 falls, or 5 falls and a tech,
right?
Even though they gave up 4 falls themselves and injury defaulted at 126, they were still able to get 8 wins out of that duel. And again, it was Oak Forest is, at least this year, just a team they match up well with.
Yeah.
So they're so there you go. I thought Lamont would have a chance to repeat that, but I didn't think it would be by as much as the first time. But boy, those guys in the middle are just money for them, and that's what's going to make the duel against Washington interesting, because Washington is so weak in that area. If they're able to get Nash away from Hewlett and get some and get the if they're able to avoid Hewlett and avoid Head and get big points everywhere else from 138 to 82.
Yeah,
they've got a fighting chance.
Yeah, well, and then obviously they're not gonna they're probably gonna give up bonus points to Punke, but
they may not put anybody out there.
Yeah, they'll probably forfeit. I was thinking, if you can bump,
what Washington may do is try to get Punky against Gothard, which I'm sure Lamont is going to avoid at all costs.
Well, it's funny too, because so much of that depends on that flip.
Yep, coin flip will make a difference. If they're able to keep them separated, then that'll be 6 one way and probably and possibly 6 the other. So we'll see.
Well, just before we close this whole thing up, and I want to just throw this out again, me not so much thinking out of the box, but what I would like to see reference dual team state, particularly given some of the really horrible regional assignments we get. I would like to see to go back to 8-team sectionals. And hey, in the regionals, advance the number 1 and number 2 teams in the regionals and split them up and have a 1 face a 2 and do like we used to do, where we crowned a team sectional champion and you wrestle the full quad that, well, not an entire quad, but more like a double duel where, first 2 team, you have the first duels, teams that win advance, they wrestle, team that wins it advances to state, team sectional champ. You get more teams involved, and it's a little bit fairer system, particularly given some of our lopsided regional assignments.
Yeah, well, the only problem with that is a lot of teams that should be in don't even finish in the top 2 when you look at the regional assignments.
But at least you get two more teams advancing.
Well,
and in 1A, you and I both know.
It needs to be something that is completely dual originated. And I think I think we're at the point now where guys like Randy Conrad have the ear of the athletic directors, and the athletic directors are really the guys that hold the power here.
Absolutely.
And so we'll see what happens this off season, and whether we're able to make some progress. But
let's face it. How nice was it to finally see full wrestlebacks at state?
Sure.
Finally.
Yeah. Now it was also 3 very long days for the officials.
True.
For the the assembly hall folks, for the table people.
Sure.
They're good at they're I heard it said, and I agree with this, that they probably need to bring in maybe 6 more officials if you're going to have 3 full days of wrestling like this.
Which is long. And there's other things too, I've heard.
It does add time, and it does add matches, and it does add fatigue to people that are working really, really hard.
Oh, heck yeah.
So that's but it did accomplish the purpose. It's really hard. It's a really hard thing to do with 6 mats to get that much wrestling in.
Well, right. We know we need more space and more mats. And I've heard the bit about splitting 1A and 2A to one location and 3A to another.
I'm not in favor of that.
No, and I'm not either. But we definitely need more mats and more mat space.
Right.
But I would say this, looking at the way things went, there were guys this year who placed under the new system that would have been eliminated under the old system.
It turned out to be about 14 of them, I believe, and several of them were guys that placed last year who would have gone 1 and out this year. So it's I
mean, it's a better system.
Those guys were certainly as deserving of placing as any as anybody else who did.
Absolutely. And I mean, me personally, and you probably agree with this too, a full wrestleback is a more fair system than the old follow the leader thing.
Sure.
Which, just didn't make any sense.
That's why all but 3 states
all but 3
have full double eliminations now. It was all but 4 until this year.
Yep. Well, I'm just glad we're on the right side now.
Yeah, I'm glad. Me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and call tonight here. We got dual team state, obviously, coming up this weekend. We'll do one more podcast where we'll kind of do a recap of the season, maybe a little bit of outlook to the next season. And then that'll be it until the summer. And then, of course, next season might do a few I might have some individual podcasts that'll deal with just maybe coaches or certain wrestlers, but that won't be along this line. So I'm going to go ahead and say good night with Rob here. And again, folks, comments, suggestions, we're wide open. And hopefully, and we kind of talked about this, I'm going to go ahead and tease this. Hopefully we're going to host a national level podcast. We've been kind of talking about it. I'm going to tease it. We'll see with when. And
we'll see what develops.
We'll see what develops. So, we may have a whole lot more coming next season. So I'm going to go ahead and say good night, and hope you all enjoyed it. And I'll be down there, a dual team state. Any of you see there, by all means, come on up, say hello. And
hope they put you in a better spot this year.
Oh, God, yes. I told them, please put me in between. You've been between the two mats instead on the far side, so I don't have Jason and Sally having to text me names and bout numbers. All right, folks. Have a good evening and enjoy the upcoming weekend.